Hey, and welcome back to the second installment of my sort of ongoing review of this truck and updates as things progress and hopefully not poorly. I'm Christian, and this is Pacific Northwest Wreckage. The first video in this series occurred at 3.5 weeks and about 3,500 miles. Things have slowed down a little bit, but not a ton. Today is April 9th, and it is exactly, it's May 9th. It's not April 9th. It's May 9th, and we're at exactly 6,600 miles, so exactly 2 months and 6,600 miles. So I just wanted to provide an update on how things are going so far, some of the good, some of the bad, and just I guess give you guys a picture of how this truck has been aging and how I've sort of been growing with it. So tomorrow it's going in for its first oil change, and a little bit later than I wanted to, which is kind of frustrating, but had some stuff happen and couldn't get to it, which is why it's been a while since I posted a video. So hopefully get back on schedule with things being able to happen at the rate I'd like them to. So in the meantime, here's what I've noticed so far. So full disclosure, during my last video, I talked about how I wasn't sure if it was like the spare tire carrier or the bed itself, but that after going over like certain bumps, that there was a pretty significant thunking sound coming from sort of the back end of the truck. And it's something that started happening with my old truck as well. And I have reached the conclusion that that is not the truck's fault. That is my hitch that is installed, my drop hitch that is significantly heavier than the hitch that I was running before. And makes a pretty loud sound, just wiggles just enough inside the receiver so that it actually makes a very loud noise. So I'll be looking at kind of ways to maybe dampen that down a bit, maybe shim it so it doesn't move around so much, but really it's not a big deal. So just first and foremost, if you've been following this series, and by series I mean if you watched the first video, then just answer that question. That's nothing wrong with the truck, that is just something that I've noticed. The other thing is that I talked about the key fob not being detected pretty regularly, and that is something that is continuing to happen. It's not getting better or worse, it's just sort of intermittent and doesn't always make a ton of sense. So I've realized that, and again I mentioned before, it's all, when it's in the pit, my center console here, that's usually where it's happening. It's also like that little pocket underneath your hard buttons, like for your exhaust brake and tow haul mode and things like that. If it's anywhere in the center area and occasionally in my pocket, it's an issue. There's two things that I'm concerned may be contributing to that, and that they're not the truck's fault either. One of those is my console vault, which is just smack dab, big chunk of metal in the middle of the console. The other is my AR-15 that's mounted in the back. And the reason why I think those two things are important is because I think that the actual sensor that detects whether or not your key is in the truck, I think that may actually be in the rear of the truck, because I had to move that around when I mounted my AR-15 in my previous truck, just sort of like to get the mounting points exactly where I wanted them, I had to adjust where that was. And so I'll include a picture of that here. So I'm not 100%, but there's a little antenna attached to it. I've Googled the numbers, nothing comes up. So if anybody has any insight on what those actually are, I would love to hear it. So when it goes in for its first oil change tomorrow, it's going to be, they're going to take a look at some of the just things that I've noticed and see if there's actually an issue there or not. So those are the two things I just want to get out of the way first and foremost. And here's what I've noticed between last video and this one in terms of concerns and some of the good things. So my driver's side door is still a little bit more difficult to close than the rest of them. You know, it just leads, like my wife accidentally left it just like partially closed overnight. It's nice that the dome light and everything, dome lights turn off after a while, but still, you know, I'd rather that's not an issue. And so they'll be looking at that, hopefully just an alignment problem. It's broken in a little bit so that it actually closes a little bit easier, but it's still not quite as easy as the rest of them. And before anybody freaks out, like, I'm not really complaining about that. I'm just letting you know exactly what an accurate picture of owning this truck is like, because that to me was really helpful when I was shopping, and I hope it's helpful for you too. The second thing is that my actual slider window, let's see if I can get it to do it. I don't know if you can see, I think you can see it, maybe not. When it's closing, like if I open it all the way, when it starts closing, it kind of gets hung up for a second, and it takes like a 2 count before it really starts moving full speed to like actually close. So that may just be like, I guess there could be like some hay in there, because there is hay everywhere in this truck. If any of you own horses, you'll know what I'm talking about. Anytime my wife wears like one of my hoodies or a jacket to take care of her horses, I end up poking myself underneath my fingernails when I reach my hands in my coat. So not a huge fan of that, but as you know, I'm not a huge fan of horses, so I guess that makes a lot of sense. So they'll take a look at that tomorrow as well. Beyond that, really, I haven't seen anything else. Key fob, door, and rear slider. That's really it. So I think for, you know, the 6,600 miles I put on this truck in 2 months, overall looks pretty good. And on the note of kind of that break-in period, I am in the process of doing something that talks a little bit about mileage for another video, so I won't go into a ton of detail about it, but mileage has steadily increased. My best mileage I've gotten so far was a trip to Central Oregon and back. It was about a 300-mile trip in one day, and I averaged exactly 20 miles per gallon during that trip, and that includes going over the mountain passes twice. And it was a relatively crazy day. Like
New text message from Amber Greer.
It was a relatively crazy day. So I'm going to put this on mute so we don't get interrupted anymore, because the do not disturb feature is really cool. So what was I going to say? All right, so that day, that drive was pretty crazy. It started with a ton of snow. The path, which, you know, I'll include some video of that here. Actually, I'll just stop talking so you can hear my commentary, because it plays into what led me to having this truck in the first place. No big deal. Not concerned at all. I'm definitely not worried or uncomfortable. Gentlemen, appreciate your efforts. Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, not concerned at all, because, you know, I have no bad experiences with snow whatsoever while driving a truck almost identical to this one. Here's the pass coming back. As you can see, Mount Hood Pass is even worse than Sandy Am. Look at all this snow and ice. It's ridiculous. Oh wait, no. Yeah, so, you know, Oregon just, it's like mentally ill weather. Anyway, so during that drive, this truck was absolutely flawless. I had no issues. I mean, you know, even my tire pressures have remained relatively constant over the last 2 months, and I'm always pretty impressed by that, as it doesn't seem to be the case on most vehicles. So just going through that's been pretty good. Also, one of the things that I noticed, like my favorite gauge to have on like the center display is the boost and exhaust braking gauge. Because I have, my little gauges are transmission temperature and oil temperature, and just because those are really useful for me when I first start the truck up, just, you know, so I know like to kind of wait to get on it. But the center display I always usually have on as the turbo and boost gauge, and that was the logo actually, or the thumbnail for the original video, the first installment of this series. So as I've been watching it, I noticed my last truck hit 31 PSI, and every now and then it would hit 32 PSI. It wouldn't do it all the time, but it would do it pretty regularly. This truck, not once before 6,000 miles did it ever hit over 28 PSI. And I'm curious if you guys have had anything similar like that, if you've monitored that yourselves, because I'm just wondering if Cummins has some sort of maybe built-in break-in system in terms of not running full boost until you're at the break-in threshold, which allegedly is 6,000 miles. I would disagree with that. I think it's probably closer to 10, and that may be because despite my attempts to run diesel that does not have a biofuel component or a biodiesel component, I have not been entirely successful in doing that regularly, which may again be delaying my break-in period. But I'm hitting full boost regularly now, and the truck feels significantly snappier and more powerful than it did in the first 5,000 miles. Oh, mileage has continued to go up. My best so far, again, is right at 20 miles per gallon. and I'm just seeing kind of this slow but progressive increase. And overall, I mean, it still smells absolutely brand new. Well, right now it smells like barbecue because I went somewhere on lunch and ordered way too much, so I'm taking it home, which isn't a terrible smell, but like, you know, it's nice to get in your truck and have it smell new, particularly with the weather here getting nicer, hence the sunglasses. Getting in a hot truck, it smells just like sitting in a truck on the dealer lot. Oh, I haven't really noticed, like, the wheels still look great, the paint still looks great, there's no pitting in the headlights, I have no cracks in my windshield, and I've driven, you know, the heck out of this thing, and I have not been, you know, I don't baby it around, I floor it, you know, regularly, at least twice on my way to and from work, because it's super fun to just get like slingshotted up to speed. So, you know, the seat, I think the only like minor wear item has been my butt imprint right in the driver's seat, and that's about it. So, I've had 5 people in it. It rides really nice. I think the Bilsteins, whatever they're trying to call themselves, really do a nice job of being a better on-road ride and a significantly better off-road ride. I've had this thing through some kind of hairy obstacles. I actually got my first scratch on it doing that, and so I'm going to dial that back because we're not going through that again. But the limited slip differential has been really solid. I think it's a far more capable truck than my last one was. I continue to be impressed with just its general like quiet ride on the freeway. I mean, I'm doing 75 miles an hour right now, and again, I know this does not come across on like an action camera microphone, but it is definitely quieter than my wife's Subaru. It's quieter than my buddy's Tacoma. I mean, it is one of the quietest rigs that I'm in, and it's a full-size truck with a diesel engine. So I'm just really impressed by that. I have absolutely no complaints about it. I mean, I noticed DEF consumption or DEF consumption was relatively high. Like, I had to refill it right about, you know, 4,000 miles, and it was like empty. It was like I had 30 miles remaining before it was gonna be limited to 5 miles per hour. And I sort of did that just to see like what kind of range I was getting out of it, and I didn't keep track of it, so this is just sort of anecdotal information for you. But during your break-in period, I would expect that you will go through more diesel exhaust fluid than when your truck is broken in. I refilled the DEF, which is like, it takes, I believe, exactly 5 gallons is how big the tank is on the 2500. I believe it's bigger on the 3500, particularly the dual rear wheel 3500. 3500 might be the same across the board, who knows? Well, somebody knows. But DEF consumption is significantly lighter. I guess. Oh, also on the subject of wear items, my rear tires, that's not the truck's fault, that's my fault. Like even rolling into it, it'll rip the tires loose, and it does a nice job of sort of controlling that, especially with the much hated, much maligned torque management that Ram has built into these to keep you from exploding your transmission as you launch off the line. But it still will rip them loose, and my rear tires have significantly less tread than my front tires. So I know they'll rotate those tomorrow when it goes in for service. I'm not really very concerned about it. I think it'll be fine. So something to keep in mind, and that could be just that these are all terrains rather than the highway tires that were on my other truck. And then one of the things I noticed as I was climbing underneath this thing and just looking around and trying to think of some ideas for videos, is that the spare tire is not an all-terrain. It's not one of the ones that came with like the Firestone Transforce ATs. It's a Firestone Transforce HT, which is the highway tire, which is the base model tire. So, just fun fact, and perhaps it's just like they had some extra stock, and so I got, you know, the benefit, or not benefit, I got the lower end tire. Maybe some people out there do have a Transforce AT, not an HT, but I suspect that is a money-saving tactic on the part of Ram, and it probably saves them a significant amount of money, considering that I believe people are ordering somewhere in the neighborhood of 500,000 of these per year. And I'll have to fact check that, but I'll leave it in anyway. So, and here's a video of me finding that. just because. I will update you guys regularly. I'm probably going to do a 4-month review, a 6-month review, and then it may slow down after that. But if you have questions or if you have intervals you'd like to see, I'd be happy to do that. Absolutely love this truck, and I think if you're in the market for one, you know, I had 27,000 miles under my belt in one very similar to this, which was my first truck. May it rest in peace. And now that I am on to my second truck, I'm experiencing a very similar lack of problems. So it is, I find it to be very trustworthy. It has not let me down a single time. I've had absolutely nothing significant go wrong with it, and just a huge fan. So thank you for watching, and if you would like to follow me on Instagram, my username is pnwreckage. That's also my email address, pnwreckage@gmail.com. Please feel free to reach out if you have questions or concerns, and I will look forward to seeing you guys on the next one. See you then.